What if your surgeon told you your endometriosis wasn't that bad? Only to find out later that your uterus, bladder, and rectum were fused together by the disease. That's what happened to Deb Stark. After years of pain, dismissal, and being told she was fine, Deb finally found a specialist who understood what others had missed, and what he discovered changed everything. Now she's turning her experience into a mission to help other women recognize when something isn't right, find better care, and become their own strongest advocates. This is a conversation many of us can relate to. You won't want to miss it, so stick around. Welcome to Endo Battery, where I share my journey with endometriosis and chronic illness while learning and growing along the way. This podcast is not a substitute for medical advice, but a supportive space to provide community and valuable information so you never have to face this journey alone. We embrace a range of perspectives that may not always align with our own, believing that open dialogue helps us grow and gain new tools. Join me as I share stories of strength, resilience, and hope, from personal experiences to expert insights. I'm your host, Alana, and this is Endo Battery, charging our lives when endometriosis drains us. Welcome back to Endo Battery. Grab your cup of coffee or your cup of tea and join me at the table. Today, I'm joined by Deb Stark, the founder of Wulf Woman, a platform created from her own deeply personal experience with endometriosis, chronic pelvic pain, and the search for answers. After years of being told that her pain was normal or that there wasn't much wrong, Deb eventually found a specialist who recognized the severity of her disease. Her second surgery revealed extensive endometriosis throughout her pelvis and abdomen, with her uterus, bladder, and rectum fused together. That experience became a turning point, not only in her own healing journey, but in her mission to help other women avoid the same path. Through Wulf Women, Deb is working to provide trustworthy education, vetted resources, and practical tools to help people better understand endometriosis, prepare for surgery, find appropriate specialists, and become stronger advocates for their own health. Please help me in welcoming Deb Stark to the table. Thanks, Deb, so much for sitting down with me today. I am thrilled to be able to just sit in a space with another advocate who takes things to a level of passion and clarity and everything else. So thanks for sitting down with me today. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I think that one of the things that's the most impactful things as a patient we can hear is someone else's story and how they get to where they are in their advocacy, because we all start advocacy with our own story. It always starts with a background. It starts with whether something was really good or really bad, or maybe something in between. So what was it for you that drew you into this space? What is your story? How do we get to know you better?
Yeah, well, what brought me to my advocacy work? I mean, I have a story that's very similar to many other stories that you've probably heard. My story is important, but it's not unique. Starting with years of strange symptoms that I didn't quite understand or connect, right? Turning into extremely severe pain that was crippling that no one could figure out, being a mystery to my doctors, finding out through Reddit threads, reading through, and I'm digging through, typing my symptoms in like many of us have, most of us have, and finding the word endometriosis and reading the stories of women who have endometriosis and thinking, this doesn't look good. Convincing my gynecologist who I'd been working with that I had endometriosis, and convincing her to do a surgery in which she missed 95% at least of the disease that was in there, telling me that I was fine and dropping me. I think the moment that everything changed, it's like that Hillary Duff song, "In a Moment." It was taking the photo, and I knew after my second surgery, or my first surgery, something isn't right. And then my body just was screaming through that year. And I got a hold of the photos from my surgery, and I went to a specialist that I'd found, Dr. Adam Duke in Post Falls, Idaho. And I showed him the pictures, and I said, and I gave him all my notes. I said, something's not right. Please, for the love of God, what is wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
And he just, it was like an average Tuesday for him. He says, "Oh, there's the endo on your rectum. Oh, your appendix is destroyed, your uterus is destroyed, your cervix is destroyed. Here's the." And I just could not believe in that moment that years and years had gone by and I'd had a surgery where someone took photos of what was going on and no one could figure this out. And it was so easy for him to look at those photos and say, I know what's wrong with you. Those are the words that every woman earlier in their endometriosis journey wants to hear. I know what's wrong with you. That's the golden nugget that we're
Yep.
all looking for. Um, and I mean, I started making videos online
Mm-hmm.
preparing for this surgery with Duke. And, I was just like, I'm just going to make one video a day. I've always wanted, I'm a Leo. I love to talk. I'm a singer as a kind of a side gig.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to just turn on the camera and start talking, but I never knew what I wanted to talk about. And I was like, okay, I've got something I'm going to talk about. And I didn't really expect anyone to listen, but I was like, I've learned something crazy that I need to tell people about, and I need to work through this traumatic, crazy thing that happened to me. So just turned on my camera, started talking. Hey, I'm Deb. Here's what, got a surgery. I had my surgery, and boy, was it damaged throughout my entire pelvis and abdomen. I mean, most of the organs from my rectum up through my rib cage were fused together. Just in a solid lump. It was crazy. I don't know how I was living. But yeah, that grew as the months went by. More and more people started sharing their own stories, and I learned that my story's not special. Thousands, millions of women have the exact same story as me, sometimes even more horrific. And it grew. I started learning more, and I started sharing what I learned as I learned it. And then I started making educational jingles about endometriosis to try to bring more women in to teach them what I'd learned so far, doing skits, and it's just kind of snowballed.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. And you're talking about, trying to convince your doctor that you have endometriosis. And I'm like, what other disease subset do you have to convince your doctor that you have when it's so prevalent? It's 1 in 10, really closer to 1 in 7 is what some of the
Yeah.
now statistics are saying, right? So,
Uh-huh.
why we have to convince them that classic signs of endometriosis are endometriosis and for them to investigate is shocking to me. Every single time I hear this, I'm like, why is this not taken seriously every single time? And why are we not at a pediatrician level starting to look at these symptoms earlier on?
Mhm.
Where are we missing the mark here? And as patients, we are the ones that often become more passionate about that because we've lived it, right? And the experts are very passionate as well. But how do we start this earlier so that you don't have fused organs? How do
Mhm.
we prevent the loss of being able to have kids if we want, or the ability to have a functioning kidney for a lot of people who lose kidneys and
Mhm.
silently lose their kidneys and they don't know. It's just baffling to me that yes, your story is not all that uncommon, but it's still so impactful and so powerful because it paints a picture of just how we are often not taken seriously in our own symptoms. It's
Mm.
to convince someone to take us seriously is such a task, and it's such a hard task at hand a lot of times. When you are going through that process initially with your first provider, was it you that brought up the potential for endometriosis, or did she say anything at all about it, given your symptoms?
Mm. She said nothing about it. I told her my symptoms. She recommended birth control, which I'd been on birth control for 15 years. And once I stopped taking it, that's when the pain got started. And some of the other random bladder infections that weren't bladder infections, those started kind of,
Yeah.
I was like, I hopped off birth control. The pain got, and then she said, get back on birth control. You were better. And I said, Doc, I think there's something mechanical going on. And she did find an ovarian cyst when she had done I had many, many ultrasounds. So she's like, oh, you got a cyst. It's fine. And I'm like, I don't think a cyst is big. I don't think that's the problem, Doc. There's something going on in there. She said I was a mystery. I refused the birth control. She suggested medical menopause. And I said, I don't think that solves a mechanical problem either. I'm no doctor, but my
Yeah.
instincts are telling me that no pill is going to make whatever's happening go away. And she had a big list of supplements. I mean, I found it on the Reddit threads, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about endometriosis?" She said, "I don't know. Your periods doesn't sound like your periods are that heavy." And I'm like, "I don't know, doc. I've been doing all this reading, and and it's the classic like, oh, you better stay off of WebMD, stay off of Reddit." And I'm like, "No, Reddit saved my life, dude."
Yeah.
Like, um, yeah. Sorry, that was a long answer, but that was a
No,
journey.
it's true. Like, it's sad that we have to, as patients, be the ones to be the investigator and really
Mm-hmm.
dig into what's going on. And symptoms aren't mysterious. There's a reason for our symptoms. And it's whether they're curious enough to explore those symptoms and look at the bigger picture as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
isolating those symptoms. And I think that a lot of times within endometriosis care, they tend to isolate the symptoms as opposed to
Yeah.
looking at it as a full body thing. Because again, what they're taught in medical school is that it is a period disease. If you don't have heavy, painful periods, which is one of the only identifiers for a lot of OBGYNs, then it's not endometriosis, right?
Mm.
When it's a whole body systemic disease. And now that's being classified that at a federal level, which is fantastic. Um, Maybe we'll get more recognition. I don't know, but it is like one of those things where because they work in a silo, they see symptoms siloed, they don't look at it as a complete picture. And I think that's what's so hard about a disease that ravishes the entire body. And symptoms vary from patient to patient. It's
Mm-hmm.
so hard when you don't have more background into the disease. You don't have a skill set that really follows the disease and you're not solely focused on it, which is kind of what led you to what you're doing now, right? Like figuring that all out and working in advocacy, which every patient that does advocacy doesn't do it for no reason. Like it's
Yeah.
not easy. It's a lot of work.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it really is. It's been really crazy as I learn, right? And it's been a few years of late nights up, digging through, reading research papers, asking ChatGPT, what does this word mean, and how might it relate to me, and putting these maps together in my brain and my own back end of resources. And, you know, I don't think that you can't just learn about you can't just read like a pamphlet and learn about endometriosis, or have one conversation with a doctor and learn about endometriosis.
Mhm.
Like the information out there about it is so scattered and fragmented, and there's a lot of opinions baked in
Yeah.
because some stuff hasn't fully been proved yet. You know, for example, the endometriosis and getting itchy, right? Like for me, that was something that presented where it's like I developed all these random food allergies. My ears itch after I eat. My whole body just itches.
Mhm.
And then I go see an allergist. Like, oh, you're allergic to everything, or you're allergic to nothing. And for me to go find something online that says endometriosis and itching, they are connected. That's not how I learned that they did have a connection for me. It
Mhm.
was, what makes you itchy? And it's like,
Right.
okay, histamines. What causes too many histamines, right? What is endometriosis? Like learning all of the different little like Candyland blocks in between
Yeah.
them and then going, aha, it's connected,
Yep.
right? And that's a lot of what I try to do on my page. And, I'll be the first to say I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I didn't even go to college.
Yep.
But I'm obsessed with the disease. Some might say it's unhealthy, but hey, you got to get your kicks somewhere. Um, so trying to professionally, what I do for work, it has a lot to do with pulling pieces of information from, let's say, lots of different departments, trying to understand a bunch of tiny pieces, pull them together into a cohesive document or resource, and to help others learn, hey, here's how our organization operates today. Let's, you know, here
Right.
it is. And then we memorialize it and it's there. And then anyone curious can read and doesn't have to do that research again. And that's a skill that I'm bringing over into Wulf Women, is like, hey, I've got probably hundreds of examples now of these things that I've like put together by learning what all these experts are saying and saying, hey, what if we condense this into a 60-second video that links to a blog that I wrote?
Right. Right.
And I think people are gravitating towards it because the amount of work that I have to do to learn what the heck was happening in my body was astronomical, and not everyone has the time or the energy to do that. So for me to try to make it easier to find the information that already exists that's my mission.
Yeah, it is hard. Like, as someone who has been in this space for a little while now, and when we just a little backstory was when the nonprofit that I'm a part of, we went to go look for really good resources that we could hand out at shows and hand out to patients walking through endometriosis. Like, what are the signs? What are the symptoms? What is the definition? It was crazy to me that there were no resources that you could print off that was a clear, concise definition with all the informed consent. So, surgical methods, ways to help with symptom management, like any
Mm-hmm.
of that. It was crazy that we couldn't find any of these resources online. It was very muddy. Like, the whole space was very muddy. It was like you click on this site and it gave you a 6-page synopsis of endometriosis and their viewpoints on it, but it wasn't very concise. It wasn't
Digestible.
digestible. Yeah, and it was like, as someone who is exhausted all the time and you are just barely making it day to day, you don't have the energy or time or bandwidth to sit there and read through all this and then decipher exactly what it's trying to say. And then
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of times that the websites would contradict, like the last part of the website would contradict the first part of the website or their descriptions. And so we just sat in space and we're like, we've got to create something similar to you. Like, we need to create something that is more, it's more set up for the patient who is going through it. The patient who is walking through some of the hardest, most vulnerable times of their life, to find good, accurate information that's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily fueled by emotion and opinion, but fueled by the accuracy of the studies, by what research is actually saying, while also taking into mind the opinions and stories of the patients, because those do matter. Like, it, at the end of the day, like, outcomes matter, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when we were putting these papers together, that was one of the things that we realized, is that we don't need long drawn out things. We need very clean, concise, factually accurate things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this space does not have a lot of that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's growing.
Yeah.
There's more and more, and I don't know if it's just because I'm immersed in the world now, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's stuff there.
There's,
But it seems like the conversation is getting a little bit louder. And my hope with Wolf Women is I just think about myself in the past, lying in bed, just writhing in pain, crying because the doctor called me a mystery again or tried to give me birth control. And just scouring, just
yeah,
reading, just desperate. Is this a symptom of it? Is this a symptom of it? Could this be, it's
yeah,
like trying to find the answer that no one could give me. And I did it, and when I think about myself in that point, and then I think about the magnitude, the amount of women that are in that exact same space that I was, you
yeah,
know, they feel they're alone, they're scared, they don't know what's gonna come. They're reading the stories, and the stories are heartbreaking. Every
mhm,
single one of them heartbreaking, and you think, "Is that gonna be my story?" You know? And I know that I might need another surgery someday, endometriosis can come back. But I look at myself now and I'm like, I'm 11 months post-op. I'm thinking about trying to do a cartwheel. Um,
yeah,
and I used to be good at cartwheel, and I just kind of stopped moving, I was just
yeah,
kind of hunched over, and it's like, I don't jump and don't jolt me and just ow. Um, and I'd like to reach back and say, hey, there's a path out. And it's not, here's what to do. Here's the protocol. Here's, 10 steps of what you need to do. Because it was years for me. It was finding the wrong surgeon, finding the right surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
finding, learning so much about the disease that I could call baloney in the doctor's office if I needed to, and be able to spot which doctors actually know what they need to know to help me and which ones don't, and leaving them behind. Figuring out my nutrition, working with EMDR therapy to do my, my nervous system completely shot. The functional doctor to do the Dutch tests and to understand my nutrients and figure out I have a vitamin D deficiency. I
Right.
mean, there's so many. Pelvic floor therapy, it is, once you gather the information, then you know enough to make a good decision for yourself. And
Right.
that's what Wulf Women is about. Not to tell you what to do, but to arm you with the information you need to make the right decisions to hopefully dig out of this hell.
Yeah. Well, and I think that a lot of times, and this is what happened with me, and probably similar to you in a lot of ways, but in my initial stage of endometriosis, I actually had a really good doctor. She was very compassionate, but I was desperate. And when I was first diagnosed, I mean, this was 2009 when I was first diagnosed. There wasn't a lot of information out there. I mean, it was
Mm.
like you could type in endometriosis and very few websites came on, maybe because it was like, the start of the internet, it felt like in,
Mm.
in that stage of mind, like I felt like that's what it was. I was like, there's nothing on the internet. But I do think like I became so desperate for relief that I was willing to try just about anything. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people with endometriosis get that way where they're just so desperate that anyone just take me back, try to fix it, try to solve, the pain, try to solve the
Mhm.
problem. I'll do anything to get to this point without knowing the long-term ramifications of doing that. And that's where I
Mm.
think like advocacy and using our voice and creating a space that has good accurate information that does touch on that is so important to give them the full informed consent, because a lot of times you walk into a doctor's office and you don't have that. You have
Mhm.
what they know, which is sometimes give or take because medical school doesn't teach it all, right? And so I think playing off of endo patients' desperate need for comfort is so prevalent that we forget that sometimes in the search for comfort, we find more pain. And that's one of the things
Yeah.
that I have really tried to avoid, and why I'm doing what I'm doing is so that we don't have to elicit more pain in our stories and trauma and multiple surgeries. And so I think that's similar probably in your story. You just wanted to find comfort. You wanted to find symptom
Mhm.
management and relief and figure out what was really going on. And it took a little try or two. Unfortunately, a lot of us
Yeah.
have to go through that.
Yeah. There's so many folks talking about endometriosis,
Mhm.
and there's varying levels of knowledge from the folks sharing information. There's varying reasons that
Mhm.
they want to help. Most are very, most people out there just have a bleeding heart and want to help, right? There's some folks that have something to sell that may or may not help, and I found it really challenging to understand who to follow. Like, what I wanted was someone to hold my hand and say, "This way, go." And I did find some of that in my care team. My surgeon, regarding the specific surgery that I needed, right, was a
Mhm.
guide for me. My pelvic floor therapy was a guide for me, but I realized I had to become my own guide, and that's what all women, that's what you have to do. It
Yeah.
forces you to become strong and to say, hey, you know, once you realize that no one knows everything about endometriosis, like, I'm obsessed and I've probably barely scratched the surface
Yeah.
on what there is to know about endometriosis. But if you can listen to a podcast like yours and listen to other people's stories and some of the wisdom that you've gathered as you've been a part of this world, if you can listen to your surgeon, if you can listen to a pelvic floor therapist, a primary care doctor, all of these different parties, if you listen to people like me, sharing what I've learned so far, like, and then use those all as tools in your toolbox and resources to guide yourself, because everyone has different goals. Everyone, for some it's fertility. That was not a goal for me. That wasn't important. For some it's symptom management, just wanting to live a normal life. I didn't want that. I said, solve the problem. I want the root of every single problem. So we all have different reasons that we're doing this with a common thread. So to grab onto information and resources, just as extend the arms and sit at the center and make your own decisions with good information.
Yeah.
That would be my biggest piece of advice. Besides, don't let your gynecologist do your surgery. But yeah.
This kind of what all of that kind of led to was Wulf Woman. Talk to us a little bit about this, because it is an exciting venture for those on the outside to be able to have a voice to help other women kind of walking through this. Talk to us about how this came about, what you're doing with this, so that we can be on board with you.
Yeah. It started with videos, right? Social media, and I'm doing this dance or whatever. I wasn't dancing back then. I was in pain. But I have done a couple. I did one dancing video. It was really embarrassing. Anyways, but more importantly, starting with the videos, and then the way that my brain works, right, is that like I'm getting this information as I learn things. I'll make a video with what I've learned. And then I was like, I need a centralized location to put all of this information. I need a website. And that's a lot of what I did when I was recovering from surgery, is like figuring out how to put a website together. And I'd say let me just tell you a little bit about the website. I'm really excited about it.
Yes.
But, it starts with, a homepage, obviously, but and there's like an FAQ of all of the most common questions about endometriosis, trying to help folks to understand things like removing your uterus isn't going to remove endometriosis from your bladder, right? Like some pieces that were real aha moments for me. A comprehensive page of what is endometriosis and all of the symptoms that I experienced that could be maybe not directly from the endometriosis tissue, but could be a downstream effect of endometriosis, it's a very popular page. But I've got a blog, and I've got a ton of resources about, guide for how to tell if your doctor is an endometriosis specialist, or questions to ask during your consultation, tips to prepare for endo surgery, a template for filling out to prepare information for your doctor. Saving the most exciting for last, though, is the Wulf Woman endometriosis surgeon directory. And I'm very aware and very respectful that there are other directories out there, right? Like it's Nancy's Nook is how I found Adam Duke, and I will forever be grateful. But as I kind of gone through that process and then doing all of the research on my surgeon, and then hearing other women talking about, like, how do I know if my surgeon is the right one for me? And I'm like, I can't tell you if it's the right one for you, but here's a way you can research, right? Here's like all these different places you can go look to put a picture together in your brain of, is this the right decision for me? Or how can I choose between these two surgeons? So what my directory is it's a list, yes, but if you click in to a surgeon, what I'm doing is I'm doing deep research on each surgeon, not sharing my opinions, because my opinions don't matter. I'm just a chick. But what are these people? How are they marketing themselves, right? What are patients saying about them? What research are they doing on PubMed? Are they deep into research about endometriosis? Can I find information about the newest technology they're using? Or if they work with a bowel specialist, or if they refer you to PT? What does an appointment look like to diagnose? I'm basically just like grabbing stuff from all over the internet, spending hours researching the surgeons, putting this paper together, and then plugging it, like publishing it for free on my website to hopefully help women to save some time and energy doing their resources. I have all the sources linked so they can go, look themselves for the information in case I misrepresented anything. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about this project. I had 20 of the profiles built. I have over 200 surgeons on the list, and I'm just going one by one and researching these surgeons with the help of my community. I put out a request to my community and said, "Hey, tell me your surgeon story. Like, tell me what it was like working with your surgeon." And I've got hundreds, maybe 1,000 by now, of submissions on the website of people sharing good, bad, neutral experiences about their surgeon, and pulling that
Mm-hmm.
in addition to what I find publicly on the internet. It's been a pretty powerful project that the community is working together on.
Yeah. How, if someone is interested in like really helping with this project, what is the best way for them to be able to engage with this project? Because I think a lot of people, have had great surgeons. Again, some have had not great surgeons. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to have that voice. They want to help the community as much as they can. And maybe this
Mm-hmm.
is a really good fit for them to help the community grow with education. How would they get involved with this project?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to get involved is to head over to my website and find the directory and to fill out the form with their experience, or even to read through some of my resources and give feedback and say, "Hey, it'd be great to see this in future renditions," or if they see something that's wrong, because I'm a human being and there could be a typo or there could be, what I want is to help amplify the voice of the community, but I need the voice of the community to do that. So come share your story. But I also want to be held accountable. I've got disclaimers all over the place, right? Of
Mhm.
of do your own research, like make your own decision. Like don't just see someone on this list and say, I'm gonna go, under the knife with them because Deb said so. Like I'm not an expert, I'm just a chick.
You're not just a
I
chick.
could get something,
You
like a
you're
cool
powerful.
chick.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Wulf Woman, baby.
You're a wolf woman. That's
Um,
right.
yeah, so I guess my point with that is, like, tell me if I did something wrong. Tell
Yeah.
me if I need to go make an edit, This is a community project, not a Deb project. So communicating with me via that form or commenting on my videos is, a great way that I understand what the community might need or how I might help. Or yeah, just
Yeah.
come join the community, honestly, because it's saved me really.
Yeah.
And so many, when we find there's so many lovely endometriosis communities out there. And before I found mine, you ever seen The Hangover,
Yeah.
where and he has that, like, that speech where he's like, I used to be a one wolf. I was a one man wolf
Yeah.
pack. And then I met you, and then you, and then it was a four-man wolf pack. I need to, like, get that down word for word. But that's how I feel about Wulf Women. Is like
Yeah.
wolf is my spirit animal, but I was a lone wolf before, and now we're an entire pack of wolf women
Yeah.
who are too informed to be ignored. And we make good decisions because we have good information. And yeah, I'm not alone anymore.
No.
And together we're building something cool.
And it's crazy, like when you can sit in a space with community members, and there's so much like evidence to point to their being power and being together and part of a community. It helps reset the nervous system. It helps with, doing your homework and being informed and all of those things. Like it helps so much with that. And that's one of the things that like I always talk about is community matters so much in this space, specifically because we live in isolation for so long, just trying to get through day to day and figuring out what's going on with us. And a lot of times for various reasons, we don't always want to talk about what's going on with us. And so that isolation creeps in in a state when
Hmm.
you're not at your best. And so being part of a community can bring that isolation to the surface and be like, I can't do this alone. And there's
Hmm.
healing to be done in that. And so I love that you're bringing that community together. I mean, there's always risks associated with doing that, obviously. Like, not everyone's going to get along in a community. Let's be honest, right? Like we're going to be real about this. This is
Yeah.
honesty. Like not everyone gets along. And it's not
Uh-huh.
no not everyone's going to see eye to eye. But I do think there's power in bringing the community together to really make it more powerful and more impactful and create change. Because I think if you ask a lot of the surgeons and the doctors, they're going to tell you a lot of the changes happened because of the advocates, because of the patients, because they're becoming
Hmm.
more informed, because they're going before senates and other community members and doctors and saying, we're done with this. We're status quo is not good enough for us anymore. And they're
Mm-hmm.
inciting this change. And so that's what's so impactful about what you're doing is you're inviting that community to create the change that needs to happen for future generations, which is all we can hope for half the time, right? Like
Yeah.
it's that little step and everyone using their skills, gifts, and abilities to create change that makes it better for not only us, but future generations. And as a parent, I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a uh quote. I don't know if I'll get it exactly right. It's on my website. It's the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the
Mm,
strength of the wolf is the pack from the Jungle Book.
right.
And it's crazy because you think of individuals and then you think of groups, societies, communities, and people feel, or I in the past have felt insignificant, right, in life. I think we all feel like that. We're one of billions, but um the pack doesn't exist without each individual
Mhm.
person as a part of it. And we're all equally important, and
Right.
it brings me comfort to be a part of a pack and to realize like my voice matters,
Yeah.
and together we're a hell of a lot stronger.
So true. It's so true.
Mm.
I just even think about like being part of the nonprofit space and the reason we created that community. And some of these women are some of my closest, dearest friends now because they
Mhm.
get it. We don't have to justify when we don't feel good. We just don't feel good.
Mhm.
Like we don't have
Yeah.
to feel bad that we can't make something that we had really wanted to do because we aren't in a space to be able to. We don't feel good, something, like you don't have to make an excuse why you don't feel good or why you can't do
Mhm.
something. We just get it. And there's something
Mhm.
so freeing and so powerful in that space. Like it's so freeing to be able to say, I can't right now. My bandwidth is shot. I am overstimulated. I'm in pain. I don't feel good.
Mhm.
And then be like, I get it. Say no more. Say no more. Whereas I think with a
Gosh.
lot of other people and like just even in our inner circle, whether they're friends or family or whatever, we feel like we have to justify the way we feel and why we can't do something. Like our
Mhm.
pain isn't enough to not do something. We have to justify how bad it is and why we can't do it a lot of times. Or we feel
Yeah.
guilty for not being able to do something. So just people that get it, that understand it, I think make a huge difference in our overall quality of life. And I think it just helps our nervous system too, to not constantly be in a fight of like trying to explain things.
Yeah, that's been a big part of my journey, all of our journeys, but it's funny because yesterday I was supposed to go out with friends and I canceled. I'd done so much. My nervous system gets so, my pain isn't too bad most days nowadays, but my nervous system is still, I'm dealing with the surgical trauma, right? And the nervous system response that comes with years of chronic pain.
Yep.
And I've done so many things in a row, social events, that it was like I can feel myself working up to an edge that I don't think is going to be good for me. So
Right.
I'm learning. I was really proud of myself yesterday, even though I felt really guilty too. It was like an inner turmoil where I'm like, I'm going to decline.
Mm,
And not because I don't have to wait until I'm crying on the floor because I
yep.
pushed myself too hard and worked myself into a flare to say no. I can just say no. And I lied in bed and I watched the most heartwarming videos of that guy who mows people's lawns and the old lady, and she's crying. She's so grateful. Oh my God. And, the soldiers coming home to their dogs, and their dogs are so. And I just lay there and I just cried. And then I walked outside and pet my chickens and my goats. And it was like, this is what I needed. Like, I don't need to do what everybody else wants me to do. Like,
Mhm.
life is hard. I'm chronically ill. And like,
Yep.
just turn off the brain and enjoy some like serotonin.
Yes. And it's also good to have people in your space remind you of that. Like that it's okay to do
Mm-hmm.
that. Like it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to like give yourself grace to step back, take a breath. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I've really struggled with. I am a workaholic if given the
Yeah, same.
opportunity. I'm also a perfectionist. Like, what is going on? Like, those of us who are
Uh-huh.
perfectionists oftentimes have limitations with our bodies. And so it's challenging because, and I've said it before, I have the buffet plate theory, which is like we as chronic illness patients are given the 6-inch buffet plate, whereas other people might get a 12-inch buffet plate. And if we try to fill everything on our 6-inch buffet plate that the 12-inch plate fits, it's going to overflow and you're not going to get the quality that you were looking for. You're going to mix up flavors and it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to spill off and you have to clean your plate. You know what I mean? That's kind of
That's
the
a good one.
theory of like, we can't take too much on. And it's okay to take little bits here and there and be done with it. And then you can add something else to your plate. But to continue adding when you don't have the space is not helpful. It's overwhelming. And we need
Mhm.
people in our space who get it, who understand it, who are there to continue to remind us that it's okay to step back and say no. And
Mhm.
I feel like even in our research to find care, it's okay to step back and say, I need help. I need support. And I think that's what you're doing with Wulf Woman, and many other advocates are doing in their own space. But this is such a great way to give reprieve to those walking through the trenches. Is like
Mhm.
they don't have to do all the research themselves. This is a tool that is a resource that isn't stated just from opinions, but it gives the facts, gives you good clarity on specific providers. And you've done the work for them, which is giving back to a community when you wish you probably had that way back in the
Oh
day.
my God. Yeah, and I know this isn't the warmest and fuzziest thing in my brain, but it's also, I am very passionate about efficiency. And a lot of what I do at work is I'm driving efficiency for organizations. And for me to go through all those years of learning, and
Yeah.
then for every other woman in the freaking universe with endo to have to go through all of that, like it's inefficient.
Yes.
Like document, stick it there, and then people can come learn what I've learned, and then they can spend the next 4 years learning even more
Yep.
instead of just getting the basics down. So yeah, I mean, everything in my universe between the efficiency, the sorrow for the past version of myself, the power of a community. I mean, there's the universe screamed at me that I needed to use my voice.
Yeah.
I don't think there was another option, and I don't plan on stopping.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just part of me now.
And to preface this by saying you doing the surgeons list, this is not surgeons paying to be on your list. This is you
No.
looking at all the learning about the
Mhm.
practice, the way they work, what the patient insight is. It's
Mhm.
not a pay to play platform. And
Mhm.
so if you think it is, if you're wrong. This is a way for you to get insight into different surgeons and how they practice. And
Mhm.
they don't have a say necessarily in how it
Yep.
how it plays out on the website. These are just what you're able to find,
Mhm.
which may not encompass the full picture. You still have to do a little bit of that research, but this might
Yeah.
give you a good base place to start and then continue to look at the various things that would change your care's outcome. Like I always
Mhm.
say, I can give you resources and tools, but you have to figure out what's going to be best for your care. It is not a
Mhm.
one size fits all. It's not a linear process. It is a very up and down roller coaster process.
Mhm.
But let's give some tools to make it a little bit easier so it's not such big drops, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said because there's a lot of information I don't have and I don't know. But uh, if you want to know what I know, you can go to my website, and that's what I've got so far, and what's on my social media. And if I learn more, then I'll check my resources, provide sources to studies as is appropriate, and stick them up for you.
Yeah. And put your voice in there. Let your voice matter too in this process. Like
Yeah.
go to the website, fill out the form and
Yes,
give
please,
your voice.
please be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm learning so much too from the community, you know. Oftentimes I'll get a lead on piece of information. Maybe that's a surgeon, or maybe that's a new treatment that
Mhm.
is potentially coming, or and you know, it's a seed. The person might not know everything, but it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm getting all these pieces of information. I can grab onto some of those and, you know, and plant them and water them and learn and share. So it's I'm like a funnel, you know. It's like drop your information to me. I'll research them one by one with the help from the community and all the experts that are talking out there,
Mhm.
and then make it public so that everyone else can see it. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I like it.
It is fun. I love looking at those things. What is one piece of research that blew your mind that just every time you think about this research, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I found that? Is there
Oh
like,
my God.
there's probably a lot, but is there one specific one that you were like, it just floored you when you looked at it?
I'm trying to remember. I need to go back into my notes and make sure I'm getting like the names of the people and the names of the the research right. I'm always very afraid I'll misquote something going by memory with
Yeah.
those details. But I mean, the there was a study about. I mean, many studies, but the way that mast cells
Mm.
are I'm not a scientist, so I'm afraid. Sometimes I accidentally say like sub out the wrong word, so I'm like very cautious. But the way that mast cells react to endometriosis in the body and the chain reaction that that sets off is just so many of our symptoms come from this. I mean, so the study was regarding the amount of mast cells that live in endometriosis tissue or near endometriosis tissue. There's a correlation there, and being able to prove that it it built a bridge between a lot of the other theories that I had, theories that the itchiness
Mm-hmm.
that I was experiencing, the histamine, the swelling, that so much of that was related to my endometriosis. Because I didn't find a lot of studies that's like endometriosis causes, you know, itching, right? But to find the study that says, hey, mast cells are definitely a thing with endometriosis, and histamines in another study are definitely a thing with mast cells, and therefore endometriosis and histamines are connected.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my biggest aha moments, like the time I was spending trying to figure out what allergies I had, when
Yeah.
really I needed to, for my specific body, lower the amount of high histamine foods that I was eating per day. And I brought on a DAO supplement to help me process my histamines before they hit my gut. And now I can, it's not an issue for me, you know? And that's crazy. Like that one study just blew
Changed
my
your
mind.
trajectory.
Uh huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because like we learn all this stuff oftentimes after our surgeries, though I didn't realize like even for me, I have EDS and I had no
Mm
idea what EDS even was. Like not a clue and
hmm.
how closely
Mm hmm.
related or, how not related, but how
It's
closely
okay.
they interact with each other, the endometriosis and EDS, like how prevalent they are in co-conditions. And so I didn't realize this till much later. And so a lot of my symptoms I was feeling weren't necessarily endo symptoms, but I couldn't really figure out why I was in pain still until I figured this
Mhm.
out. And I was like, this changes
Yeah.
everything. To understand your
Uh-huh.
body changes everything. It's just so crazy,
Yeah.
like, the way that you can now advocate for yourself, you can advocate for your care, you can change the direction of your care just by understanding your body better. So, the
Mhm.
research aspect of it is something I absolutely love doing because I learned so
Yeah,
much.
so much. Oh my
Mhm.
god, and it's cool with doing these surgeon profiles is I'm coming across a lot more studies that I get to go through and read and understand. So, not just learning about the surgeons, but give it, you know, just there's a lot of conversation out there about there not being enough research on endometriosis and women's health. This is true. I'm not going to say it's not true, but there's a lot of question marks and things that
Right.
we don't know. But there's a lot of research out there, and I'm finding more and more and more, and it's just crazy. If we could take the amount of knowledge that exists about endometriosis now and delivered it to the hands of every gynecologist that's the front line for a woman with pelvic pain and endometriosis symptoms,
Yep.
whew,
Yep.
be a whole different world. Like, we need research dollars, but we need to take that research and put it into the hands of the people, or the brains of the people that we're supposed to go
Right.
to when we hurt.
Yeah. And I want to preface this also by saying, like, not all research is created equal. There is a lot of
Yeah.
research out there that is kind of like throwing lipstick on a pig type theory, where it's like it seems like it's really good research, but it's been done and it's old research, and they just rephrased it to look prettier and have like the words and like that
Mhm.
target certain demographics. Like, not all research is good research. So you do need to know how to research these things and ask questions to those experts.
Mhm.
Ask them for clarification, ask them for better understanding. I do that all the time. Like, with
Mhm.
friends in this space who are experts, I will message and say, "Hey, I looked at this research. Can you help me? What do you think about this?" Is that often what I say? I say, "What do you think about
Mhm.
this research?" Or "What do you think about this?" And to get their synopsis of it gives me better clarity, because they're looking at research from a different lens than I am. I am not an expert
Mhm.
when it comes to looking at research. I'm not an expert at understanding it all the time, but asking the questions gives me better clarity. And I understand that
Mhm.
not everyone has that accessible to them, but a lot of times these experts will answer you if you have questions on research. They love
Yeah.
it just as much. They want to bring clarity to it. So if
Yeah.
you DM them or whatever and ask them about it, they're gonna give you better clarity on that. So just throwing that out there, they don't want to leave you in the wind either. Like, they're passionate, just as passionate as we are. So
Yeah, that's great advice. It's funny how when I first kind of wanted to get into advocacy and I was like, what do I do? I don't know, make videos, right? And at some point I just made a list of everyone that I could figure out in my area, like within a few states that had anything that attached to endometriosis in their name. And I just started emailing people. I was like, hey,
yeah,
here's what I think. Like, what do you think? And I ended up getting, I mean, just in the first few months after my surgery, getting connected, I'm like, every couple weeks I meet with one of the lead researchers at WSU about endometriosis. And I'm like, 6 months or, a year ago, I never would have thought I'd be like on the phone regularly with a researcher from a major college.
yeah,
It's funny because earlier in my journey, I felt like these people were just these like untouchable like entities in the like metaphorical sky, but really they're just people. They're just
yeah.
passionate people who have dedicated their lives and careers to solving the same problem that we want to solve from different
Mhm.
angles. And like, you email people, they chances are they want to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
It's
passionate.
pretty cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, they're really passionate.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I love most about this community is that they are so passionate. It's not like you're seeing someone that's just doing it just to make a paycheck, because a lot of them don't always make a big paycheck. Like, that's the
Yeah.
shocking thing people don't understand, is like they're not like millionaires. I mean, there are some, I'm sure, but like a lot of them are just wanting to do right by their patients. And so
Mhm.
I think they always want to give the best information they can to
Mm.
patients going through this, knowing that it's so hard for us to navigate as is, and with the information out there, and a lot of information that's a, a little hard to decipher and weed through. And so I think a lot of them are willing to do that. But what is something that you feel in your bones you are just so hopeful for?
I am so hopeful for, I mean, in 10 years, if every woman knew, no, I don't know everything, but if every woman knew as much as I know about endometriosis, then it would change the world for us. I mean, if I would have known 4 years ago what I know now, I might have spared some organs, some severe trauma, tens of $1,000s in medical bills. My bladder and my bowels might not be permanently damaged. I mean, that is that's my goal. that's my hope, is that so many women know so much about the disease and that we can get that education into the hands of the right people that can help. That, there's a million ways to tackle this problem, but if we can get the right people, the right information, then we can save lives. There's hope. It's like for so many of us, there's no hope. And we're just, once you look into the eyes of the beast of the thought that you are going to be lying in bed in pain forever and no one understands and no one's going to be able to solve it for you, that is a dark eye to look into, but to educate that there's another side of that. They found what was wrong with me. They removed what was wrong with me. I figured out that between the surgery and all of the different therapies and the diet and the supplements, like, I'm going to do my first cartwheel in years. Like, I'm going to do it. And I'm hopeful that not only will people have the information to fight for themselves, but they'll have the information to know that there is light on the other side, and it might not be perfect, and you might still pee funny, and you might, you might have issues with all kinds of things, but like, life is worth living, and people need to know that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Deb, it has been such an honor to sit with you. And I love sitting with other advocates. It fuels me, it inspires me, and it just continues to reiterate why we do what we do. And sometimes I think it can be very tiring, and advocacy can be isolating at times. And so to sit in space with other advocates and other people who just get it, like we said, makes such a big difference. And it continues to inspire me to keep going, even when I'm tired and life gets hard. Like, this community is such a great community to be a part of. And I'm thrilled that I got the chance to sit down with you and to talk to you more and learn from you and to feel the energy that you have giving into this community. It inspires me. So thank you for taking the time to do that, because it's been so fun for me.
Oh my gosh, me too. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you so much for having me. I think it's wonderful that you are bringing so many voices together. Yeah, I really appreciate you letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, I would welcome you back anytime. I'm excited to see where Wulf Woman goes. I'm excited to see where the surgeon list goes. And I want to hear other people's feedback. Like, tell us, like, how this has impacted you, because I think that we need to know if this is helpful. And I think you would agree with that. Like, if this list is helpful, like, let us know. We want to hear how it's impacted you and how it's changed your trajectory in your journey. So leave a comment on either page, Endo Battery or Wulf Woman. Like, let us know, because I'm really curious to see how this advocacy has impacted you, because I know it will. But Deb, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, and you're welcome back anytime. Anytime.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. Until next time, everyone, continue advocating for you and for others.